Hello and welcome to the 136th episode of Fur, Fins, and Feathers. We're delighted to have our guests who have returned again, Walter and Dodie Horowitz of North Kingston, Rhode Island, who are going to talk about their golden retrievers and all the wonderful things that Goldens and other dogs can do to make the world a better place. Welcome, both of you again.
Thanks for having us back. Yeah.
We enjoyed our first episode, and when we decided to keep going, I said, we need to get them again. Okay, tell us about what you do with your dogs.
Well, our dogs are the most beautiful animals you could see. They're golden retrievers, of course, we said last time, were the third most popular breed there was.
I'm ready to take him home now.
Yeah, and I think they'd be number one if they weren't so much care. There's a lot of grooming to take care of the hair on this dog.
Yeah.
But they are the most beautiful and most friendly, and they want to do things for you. And what I want to talk to you today is why Forrest is wearing this special vest. It says Pet Partners on it. And Forrest, in addition to being a Grand Champion Silver, a top winning dog in venues like the Conformation, like the National Dog Show, he is also a registered therapy dog with Pet Partners.
Talk about that. That's really interesting.
Well, what that means is that he has been tested so that they believe he will handle unusual situations. You can throw things in the room, you can have a fight, you can touch him in strange ways, you can hug him, and he just laughs it all off and says, that's fine, I want to be your friend, I want to be pet, hug me, love me. And these dogs can do wonderful things in helping people who have stress relieve that stress. And we bring them into stressful situations and places where people really could use a visit. He spends lots of time in nursing homes and old folks' homes, just walking around saying hello to people, and we get to talk to them. Sometimes people are just crazy about the dog. Sometimes they just need a good visit. And bringing the dog in is good reason. And of course, one thing about therapy dogs is they go where they're invited. We have no special permission to go anywhere other than if people want us to go there, we will go. So that, you won't see them in a restaurant, you won't see, and if somebody doesn't want them in their room as a visit, we don't go in, because we only go where people want us to go. And the good news is we're very busy, because the people want us to go lots of places. We're invited.
Such as where?
Well, we get invited back quite regularly at Wingate Residences on the east side, and Butler, Anchor. We've been down to Scallop Shell in assisted living. We are regulars at Tamarisk.
Nursing homes.
We were at St. Elizabeth's, especially the Cove, which is a memory care unit. I've been to Blenheim, Newport, and a whole bunch of ones around the state. Some more often than others. Sometimes you go with others and do a program with lots of different dogs, and sometimes we just go in and visit lots of people, depending on what's needed. Sometimes I've done some things that made me uncomfortable. There is a organization that does work with people who have problem with violence. So you have basically someone who beats people up a lot and gets arrested. One of the things instead of going to jail, sometimes they can go through this course, which is anger management. And part of that course, sometimes they invite us in with the dogs to sit down and talk to them.
Now, this is in Rhode Island. Is that through the Adult Correctional Institute?
Yes.
Yeah.
And when I first did it, I was quite afraid, to be honest. Here I'm going to go in. I'm not a violent person at all, and I'm going to sit in a room and talk to people who are there because they've been beating people up. What surprised me is that one, it wasn't a problem at all. It was a situation that was well controlled with other people there. The other one is that I'm surprised these great big burly men, how many of them were afraid of this little dog, that their relationship with people and animals is poor, so that their reaction to dogs, in fact, in general, has been poor. And they had to learn to pet the dog and be friendly. So,
yeah, I'll talk a little bit about one of our visits.
Sure.
To one of those. While we were in a room with several people and we were visiting in groups, and we were overseen by, of course, some of the personnel that worked there. There was a gentleman kind of hanging out at the door watching, and he was one of the residents there, and the ladies that were in there that were residents that were visiting were taunting him. Well, come on in. Well, he was terrified of dogs. He was terrified of dogs, rightly so, because where he grew up, a lot of people would turn their dogs loose to chase these kids, to bite them, etc. And so he was petrified that these dogs were going to attack him and bite him. But he was so drawn to the fact that some of the people he knew were sitting on the floor petting with these dogs that he couldn't just walk away and go back to his room. Eventually he came in and he watched from a distance, and then eventually he stood closer, and eventually he actually touched one of our dogs. I had Flyer back then, and he touched Flyer, and Flyer is her grandfather, but he was a top champion who was also a Pet Partner certified therapy dog. And Flyer would just laid there and smiled and sat there and smiled and gave him a paw. And eventually that guy was on the floor hugging the dog. And he went from terrified and not.
So it's a life-changing opportunity.
It was a very positive experience for that young man, and just to see him drawn into that, and that's what kind of floats our boats and makes us want to go visit more people. And
how often do you do this?
A couple of times a month, at least.
Usually, we get asked.
We've slowed down a little bit in the last couple of months because the dog that I had that was a registered therapy dog got sick and we lost her. My dog Tooshie. So she had been visiting places 3 or 4 times a month for years. But when she got too sick to do it, we had to cut back. And then now I'm training this girl, and she's almost ready. She's still a little bit uncertain about the situation, but she's quite, able to handle almost anything we throw at her, even though she shows that, I'm not the most comfortable. But she'll do fine, and she'll be tested, and hopefully we'll start up going back to the places that we used to visit. We also sometimes, in addition to bring these adults, if we have a puppy, we'll bring in a puppy. And you can't believe the delight on the face when you have a man whose most of his life has been stripped away from him. His mind is largely gone, and he has very little memory of things, but he remembers things from long ago. And you bring in a little pup and you put it in his lap, and his eyes light up, and his smile gets broad, and he says something, and even talks about a dog from his childhood, even though he doesn't remember what he had an hour ago for lunch. But the dog meant so much to him. And it's really quite an experience to do that. Unfortunately, the puppies don't stay that small very long, so we of course had to bring him the adults. He likes the adults too, but the puppy in his lap was quite a special thing.
When Glenn, my brother, of course, just recently spent 3.5 weeks at a rehab center, we got to meet Charlie. And Charlie was a mixed breed cockapoo who came, I guess, was certified by some group and took care of the owner, not the nursing home owner, the director of therapy programs, brought Charlie in every day and went to room and loved the patients. And of course, Glenn would have a treat for him, and Charlie was great. And Charlie went from room to room all throughout the center, and did a very good job bringing many smiles to people.
It's a bright spot of people's day when they do that.
Good boy,
so it's a good thing. These dogs, as I said, we're registered with Pet Partners. There are a number of other national organizations, TDI, Alliance of Therapy Dogs, Bright and Beautiful. There's a bunch of organizations that do their own registrations, and there are lots of local organizations that do it. And hopefully they're all doing a good job of having of certifying the dogs. But there is no standard, so it's hard to know. But at least if you have a tested dog, somebody's gone through the trouble of finding out how will that dog react if something strange happens, because you don't want a dog that will react badly and snap or not be friendly. In fact, sometimes people ask me what do they need to do to if they want to do a therapy dog. And the first thing I say is, does your dog like going into new situations and meeting people? And if the dog is miserable when you do that, becoming a therapy dog is really going to be hard on the dog. It's not a nice thing to do to a dog, to force them to do something that makes them uncomfortable. So the first thing is, do they like it? And if they like it, it can be fun and you can have a great time and make people happy. But if the dog doesn't, there are a lot of other good things to do with your dog. So the first thing is to find a dog that really wants to do it. And then you train them you have to basic obedience, of course, and you can do that through a lot of the organizations that do obedience. And your dog should learn to walk at your side and sit when you ask it to, stay in the location, come when called. These are all critical tools that you need to be able to do with your dog before you start therapy, so that you can have your dog under control. Dog has to be well housebroken. And that's true for almost all working dogs. And there are different kinds of working dogs that are often confused with therapy dogs.
I see dogs being brought into the supermarket.
Well, that's a funny one.
That's a good segue.
There's one kind of dog that's okay, and those are service dogs. Service dogs are the most important dogs for people, and in fact, probably the most trained dogs you'll ever see. A service dog that's properly done probably has gone through 50,000 to or more of training, hours and time to do the job. A service dog is a dog defined by the American Disability Act. That is for a person that has a disability that is somehow trained to do a task to help the person with their disability. So if you see someone with a service dog, they'll have maybe a vest like this, but it'll say something different, a service dog. And the first thing is that the dog, if it's working, don't go up and pet the dog. Because while it's working, it's got a job to do, and we don't want to distract it. So the dog, you can ask, is that a service dog? You have a disability, and then the person's yes, and you can ask, what does that dog do for you? Those are two proper questions to ask. And beyond that, you're supposed to take the person's word by law, and that's all you can ask about it. A service dog can go anywhere the person goes. There are no restrictions in a supermarket, on a plane, on the street, restrooms, anywhere the person goes, the dog goes. And sometimes they're quite critical. The person couldn't get around without them. For example, golden retrievers are one of the breeds that are very often chosen for guiding for the blind. There are a number of organizations that train them, Seeing Eyes, Guiding Eyes for the Blind, that train these dogs. And
Labradors?
Very often Labradors, Goldens, German Shepherds are the most common breeds. Almost any breed that can be trained is done. They normally want a dog with the right height, because the idea is you're going to walk down the street and the dog is going to be at your side, and it has to have, so if it's too tall, it wouldn't work out. So Great Danes don't make great Seeing Eye dogs, and a Chihuahua wouldn't do the job very well because they're down too far for you to walk with. So a Golden Retriever, a Labrador, that's the first thing. The other one is.
But the owners need to go through specific training.
First the dog gets training, and they get. Yeah. The dog is selected and probably raised by a special family for a year, and then goes back into training for at least another 6 months. And then the owner comes in and goes through weeks of training.
They usually match them.
And they match the dog to the person. And the dog has to have a very specific temperament. In fact, the Guiding Eyes for the Blind started instead of buying other people's dogs or selecting them, they started breeding their own dogs because they found lots of dogs didn't make it through the training. They started out through training, and it has to make it through. Now, this dog, I think, would have a hard time making it through because...
Why?
Why? Because she doesn't have the force of will to say no to me. If I walk down the street and I go walk across the street and I say, I'd like to cross the street, I think this dog would say, well, if you really want to, even though a car might be coming. A seeing eye dog has to sit there and go, can't go now. They have to say, I'll let you know when you can. You know, have the force of will to say, I understand you want to go across the street, but I know it's not safe. You'll wait for me to tell you when it's safe.
And golden retrievers as a breed are a little softer in temperament than a Labrador or than a
German
guide
Shepherd.
dog bred German Shepherd. They're a little bit more in command. Like a Labrador would probably test you a bit on that.
Okay.
And the Goldens are a little bit softer.
Some of them do pass.
But it takes that
more,
extra.
Takes more training, and they had too many that were failing, flunking out, that they decided that that it's expensive to train a dog, and if you go halfway through and say I don't think they're gonna make it, it costs a lot. So they're trying to get a dog that they know will more likely make it through. So they've gone, and some of the Goldens make it through. In fact, of all people, my niece, my wife's niece, just went and got a dog, and of all the breeds they picked for her, they got a golden retriever, which we were very happy to see that she got a golden retriever as her seeing eye dog, because
I took her on
she's
a
legally
road trip
blind.
to one of the guide dog schools that I've donated puppies to, and they have bred to my stud dogs, and we spent a weekend staying in the rooms that the recipients would stay in for a month training once they're matched to a dog. So they're pretty Spartan. There'll be 2 beds, a place where the dogs are hooked in the room, but very Spartan. Door that goes outside so they can take them, go to the bathroom, and then that dog is that recipient's responsibility totally, with guidance. So they train them to take them out to go to the bathroom, to know when they pooped, how to pick it up, and how to find where they picked it up. And it was very eye-opening for my niece, so to speak, because here she was finishing up her master's in psychology, and talking to, meeting all the people that ran the show there, the head vet, the head trainer, some of the trainers, etc. And they were all saying, well, when you graduate, if you're ready and you wanted to work for a guide dog school, that'd be perfect because you were a user plus, so you understand what some of these people are going through if you had to counsel people, because it's a pretty tough thing.
It's very arduous training.
Oh yeah, and it's tough for the recipients because it's, they want their independence. This helps give them their independence, but they also have to care for the dog. And I met people that, this is my tool. This is not my dog, this is my tool. And then other people that spoil the dog too much, and they start to lose their guide dog edge. So it's a balance, but it's very heartwarming to see, to meet the recipients and the graduates, and we've been to several graduations of some of the guide dog schools.
Very rewarding, isn't it?
Very, very rewarding.
Yep.
And the dogs, but dogs do so much more than just seeing eye dogs. There are, of course, people who lost their hearing. Yeah. Dogs will indicate that the phone is ringing, or the bell, the doorbell is, or somebody knocking on the door. So you have someone who's basically a hearing dog, or alerting that there's a car coming down the street because you don't hear it coming. The dog will let you know. So there are hearing dogs. There are dogs that detect seizures, of all things. Let you know that you're about to have a problem, or protect you if you fall on the ground and have a seizure. They're trained what to do in that situation. There are diabetic detection dogs that can actually sniff out that your blood sugar is too high or too low, and they have an indication to you to say your blood sugar is too low, you need to eat something, or your blood sugar is too high, you have to take some insulin. The dog can actually tell you that because their noses are so good.
And we've bred some of all of those.
Some of all
over
those.
the years.
Oh yeah. So the dogs can do a multitude of tasks for someone who has a disability. You know, to, help them get through a doorway, or give, you know, you're down low and raise up something, so hand money to a cashier. They do wonderful things, but we do have a problem, which is because dogs that are service dogs can go anywhere. Some people say, okay, I'd like to take my dog somewhere with me. Well, if I say they're a service dog, they have to let me go in. And the truth of the matter is that there's no proof that it's a service dog. There's no standard of, I've got a driver's license for my dog. So it's very easy. And because it's become such a problem, a number of states have recently passed laws that if you say you have a service dog and it's not, there are large fines. In Massachusetts, I believe the fine is $500 if you get caught.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they passed a law saying it. Not all states have them yet, but it is a problem.
And you can go online and order a vest.
Yeah, anybody can go online and say, "Give me a vest," and or the outfit. But yeah, there's a serious fines if you get caught. And the other thing is that if the dog doesn't act trained properly, you can ask them to leave. There is no requirement to have a dog stay in a situation where they shouldn't. So if the dog starts jumping on people, starts barking, starts acting up, where there's no good reason, clearly if a dog is barking because the person needs help, that's appropriate. But if they're acting improperly, you should ask them to leave. That's not a proper service dog. So yeah, there is a problem. Hopefully not too much of a problem. Especially people want to fly with their dog. Which brings me to another class of dogs. There's a third. We had therapy dogs. We've got service dogs. The third one class is emotional support dogs. Now, emotional support dogs have the least requirement for what they have to be. Basically, if you have an emotional problem and you have a doctor who's an expert in the field, and he says, yes, this dog can do something for you to help you, you can get a letter that says you're required to have an emotional support dog. Today, that pretty much means that if in housing, they can't say you can't live with that dog. You can't have a dog here. That the dog has to be allowed there. And unfortunately, there are no training requirements on that dog.
Which is too bad.
Which is too bad. So the dog can be vicious. It can be anything. It doesn't matter. It can be not housebroken. The dog is an emotional support dog. And because of that, they don't have much right to go anywhere. For a short period, the government had required emotional support dogs to be allowed on planes. But there were so many, first of all, the dogs are not very well trained. So there were a lot of issues where the dogs were doing things where you'd sit in one seat and the person next to them was threatened by the animal. And other people did strange things, claiming that their snake was an emotional support snake and their emu was this emotional support emu.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Well, there was so much strangeness going on, the government said, this is not a good idea. And instead of going through the effort of having a minimum standard that they had to pass or any kind of testing facility, they just said, nah, we're not doing that anymore. So now, most airlines do not allow emotional support animals, and the few that do, they have a charge for it, and they're very skeptical about allowing you to go in. So basically people have ruined the whole thing by saying, I've got an emotional support flamingo, and I'd like it to bring it on a plane.
Sitting in Green Airport one day, you see, one, two, they're all lined up.
Yeah.
Right. Well, certainly service dogs were acting properly, and certainly this dog, he could pass. We would never do that, but he could pass because he's so well trained, sitting at my wife's feet when she wants him to. But yeah, if a dog is not acting properly, it doesn't matter what you claim they are, they're not allowed. A service dog will be trained to be able to say, look, you sit between my legs, don't move, and they'll do that, a proper service dog.
Tell them about Ben.
About
her brother.
Her brother?
Her brother.
Her
Ben.
brother. Well, we are amateur therapy dogs. organizations now. You mentioned the that nursing home that has a professional that has a dog.
Yeah.
One of the newer things is police. Police have an image problem. A number of years ago, the police in Franklin, Massachusetts said, we want to do something to help our image problem. And we want to have a tool for situations that we don't have.
Community outreach.
Community outreach. So they decided that they wanted to have a therapy dog. So in fact, her brother was the first therapy dog selected for a police department in Massachusetts. And he was trained, and he was a great success. So much so that lots of police departments in Massachusetts have gone out and gotten therapy dogs.
Over 30.
Oh,
Many of them Labradors, and one was on this show.
There you go.
And the whole point of that is first of all, they can go into a situation to help make the police look friendlier. That's the first thing. The other one is there are situations where the dog is the perfect tool. An example is in a school. They had a student who was had issues and very much acting up, and got so out of control that the teacher couldn't handle it, the principal couldn't handle it. They had to call the police, of all people.
Well,
Now the question is,
police.
what will the police going to do coming running into a school to deal with a child who's going crazy, right? Certainly drawing their guns is not an answer. Well, what they did was they came in with her brother, Ben Franklin, of the Franklin Police Department, and right away, having a fluffy, friendly dog caused the child to calm down. And he relaxed and pet the dog, and they told him that if he behaved and stayed in good shape, that he could bring Ben to his class next week and introduce Ben to the whole class, that he could show off his friend Ben. And it solved the problem for them in a way.
They are going to have one, either a golden or a lab, at this school next year.
Next year.
Excellent.
All right, excellent. Well,
Fabulous.
in the school it's nice too. Certainly, in fact, I guess it's now almost 8 years ago that my friend, who was the therapy person for another school in Massachusetts, in Dartmouth, she wanted to use her therapy golden as part of her practice. And the
She did
school
language stuff with the kids.
So the school had a no dogs period in school policy. So she could not bring that dog even as a therapy dog, even though he was tested and passed, and she could not bring them. But she was applying to have the rules changed to allow that dog to come. And we in fact took part in a health fair in Dartmouth where we had a booth, a therapy dog booth. We had four golden retrievers in the booth. Mm-hmm. And lots of people in the town came through.
All the kids on the spectrum.
Especially for kids on the spectrum. And we had lots of kids come through and meet the dogs and talk to them and understand what the purpose of the dog was. And the end result is that after a meeting of the school board, they decided they would change the rules. And her dog was the therapy dog for that school until the dog passed. And since then, she's retired, so she's not there either. But
and talking about retiring, they're telling me it's time for us to conclude. But you have you back for the third and fourth. We'll have you forever.
Well,
it's always great to
We'll have to
see
bring
the
puppies
two of you.
sometime.
It's great to be here, and
you always share a wealth of information.
well, we love our dogs. We will have to work our dogs, and we have to go, and we can't stay forever anyway because she has to go to her agility class tonight. Mm-hmm. So she works in other ways too. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you again for coming, and we'll see you next time on Fur, Fins, and Feathers.